Hello. Welcome to Chew with the Chamber. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Well, my name is Rebecca Herrera, and I am the Membership Director here at the Chamber of Commerce. Our President and CEO, Janine McKenna, couldn't make it. However, she sends her regards. I'm so delighted to be here with Miss Amanda Cunningham. She is the Executive Director of Crosswinds. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. Burnout. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Let's get right into it. But before we do, I want to know a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do, and how your experts are in burnout and in wellness and in counseling.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, Amanda Cunningham, I have been the CEO for about 5 years, a little over 5 years, but have been with Crosswinds for almost 22 years. So definitely have made a career out of that, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, but I've been in the workforce even longer. So definitely when we're talking about burnout and the impacts, I feel like I bring some information to the table. I did get my undergrad and master's in clinical psychology from Emporia State University, and started out as a psychologist, and then I've just worn a lot of different hats at Crosswinds over the years until now I'm the CEO.
Wonderful. So what are some causes and some warning signs that some employers should take a look at whenever an employee is starting to have a burnout?
Well, I think it can look a lot of different ways. Typically, if you look at what burnout means, and I think a lot of times we just say it's a stressful environment, but stress can kind of be a short-term concern where when that's prolonged and over a long period of time, you can start to call it that burnout, especially when you start to see more fatigue and just maybe not as motivated to be at the job, don't want to go to work, and those sorts of things. I think it's a really relevant conversation. Just when I did a little bit of research for our conversation today, it talked about almost 1/2 of U.S. employees struggle with some sort of burnout in their lifetime, and so that's a pretty big statistic. And I know we all feel that at times. I think we've got to be looking for those individuals who maybe are missing more work than they used to, who are more irritable, who don't want to take on new tasks, who maybe aren't getting along with other people, and just inability to perform at the level that they were before.
So I've heard of a saying called silent quitting. What is silent quitting, and how does that go with burnout?
I think that's probably a phrase to just talk about, like, I'm done and I'm not motivated to be at work and I don't want to do it anymore, but I don't really want to quit. And so that silent part is being dissatisfied with the environment, but remaining in it and just surviving.
What are some tips that we can give employees so they can not be a silent quitter, or how they can regain that level of energy again for their work?
Yeah, I think one, it's really important to find work that motivates you, or that connects with you and who you are as a person. So something you're going to be excited about and feel valued in doing whatever it is that work is. So I think that's the key thing. Are you in the right place? And then really, there's lots of different things we can do. So setting boundaries. Some of us aren't as good at saying no sometimes, but you got to be able to know when that time is that you need to say no, versus most of the time I can get by with not doing that. So the boundaries are important. Having good support systems are important. So making sure you put some priority on relationships and establishing those connections with other people. I also think it's important to really think about, from an employer standpoint, are work tasks distributed fairly?
Right.
And so sometimes that can cause an employee to feel misunderstood or misused, and that can kind of lead to some of those things. So we really want to make sure they're connected to their role. We want to make sure that they feel like their workload is comparable to the next. I think sometimes, even though we might want to avoid harder tasks, but giving somebody a more difficult task, or a challenge maybe is a better word, to really get excited about and motivated by. And then again, if I'm successful in this challenge, it's going to help me feel connected and get something back from whatever that is that I just completed.
So, talking about self-care and work-life balance, that is probably one of the hardest things ever. I personally, I get lost. I get lost in that. My personality, I'm such a workaholic that I forget like what my life is if it's not work, you know. What are some things that an employee can do to avoid the burnout, and other things that employers can do as well to help prevent that to their employees?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that about yourself. I think people watching right now are going to laugh when I try to say work-life balance, but I think it's a very individualistic concept. Some people need more of a regimen and more of a structure, where others can kind of pour lots of things lots of themselves into lots of different things. And so one is just really knowing yourself and what those boundaries need to be. When do you need to say no? It's important to do some self-care. You know, that term gets thrown out a lot. And then who's responsible for that self-care? Is it myself? Is it the employer? You know, where does that come from? But really having some routines built in, whether that's exercise or you know, doing some mindfulness practice, doing some yoga, habits and hobbies is a better word, are really important. You know, having something outside of work that you can look forward to and go do. And then those relationships we talked about a little earlier are really important. Sometimes it's those things though that are hard to actually put into play. And so that could be where your support system becomes important. Let's go for that walk, or let's go, you know, do this hobby that we both enjoy to do, so that we're making sure that we are actually getting out and practicing those kind of self-care things from the employee standpoint. On the employer standpoint, I think you're hearing more and more about employers offering some sort of wellness program or self-care type of things. I know we've been taking a lot stronger look at that over the last year and a half or so, building things into the day that employees can take part in, having things after hours that they can participate in, whether that's, you know, a yoga session or a book club that we have at work. You know, so there are more robust wellness programs where employees can get points for doing those different things, and then it can help. They earn prizes, or they can take, you know, charges off of their insurance. There's just lots of ways to look at it. So I think from an employer standpoint, it's just really important to recognize that we've got to build some of those things in and make it easier for employees to participate. Not necessarily that we have to do that for them, but that it gives them the opportunity to get that break. And then I think the other thing is just having an open environment where we can talk about it, so that your employees can come in and feel comfortable saying, I'm really feeling it, I'm getting burned out, I'm not connected, I'm struggling to engage in our work, you know, daily tasks. And so just really being able to sit down and recognize that, and then reestablish what needs to happen. Some people need to really, those coming back to boundaries, need that 8 to 5. And then, you know, if it's 5 o'clock, you need to leave, versus the person who kind of blends over and it's all of a sudden 6:30 and they haven't gone home, and those sorts of things. So really just helping reestablish what the needs are, listening to the employee, identify what they need in a workplace, as well as what would be best for them, and coming up with a blend. They don't always match with whatever the workplace needs to be, but if we can get somewhere in the middle, I think that's really important. I think the other thing that employers offer that maybe everybody doesn't know that can fit perfectly into this conversation is an employee assistance program, so their EAP. That's usually a benefits package that a lot of employers have that could contain therapy. It could possibly have some of these other self-care things that we're talking about, or opportunities to connect with others through those. And so I think those are an important piece of the culture and environment of a workplace.
That's amazing. I love how you brought it up like 2 or 3 times, setting boundaries. And that's something that it's hard for a lot of employees, setting that boundary, because we don't want to upset our leader or upset our boss. And how can we recognize and address the burnout to our employer in a way that we're still being professional, still like not overstepping our boundary as an employee, Does that make sense?
Yeah, I believe a lot in, if you're coming from the right place, it's going to be pretty hard to do it wrong. And
Right.
so in that conversation, one, you have to have somebody who's willing to hear it. And I understand that not every boss is created the same, or supervisor, but I think that's a really important opportunity to be able to talk through what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. There's a big difference between coming in a room and saying it one way and saying it another. And so when you're coming from the heart and you're coming from the right place and disclosing, that should be taken serious. And so I would just encourage people to be honest, to come from a place that's real, and give yourself grace. I mean, the thing is we've all been an employee on some level. And so, and even if we are a supervisor or one of the management team, we also have days where we struggle with the workload or with how we're feeling motivated and some of those things. So I think for the most part, people are in leadership positions are starting to recognize that we're all, it's all a level playing field, for lack of a better word, that we're all on the same team, and
Right.
and that hierarchy doesn't or shouldn't really exist when you're talking about feelings and what the needs are.
Well, thank you so much for all the insightful information. I mean, I've learned so much just talking with you today about, burnout and how to avoid it. And I really appreciate you taking the time and coming and talking with me about it, and spilling the tea a little bit.
Yeah, it's always fun to get out and talk about things and help people think about things a little differently.
Yeah, Amanda was like, tea with the chamber, I didn't understand it. And then, because the first thing I asked her, I'm like, would you like some tea? And I told her, I'm like, Janine likes the tea. She likes to drink tea. I'm like, I like the tea.
Yeah, I thought it was the GABA tea, not necessarily the drink tea. So
yeah. But before we end, I want to end off with a sweet tip. So are you ready for our sweet tip?
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to today's sweet tip of the day. Today we're going to be learning about MailChimp. Let me tell you all about it. So MailChimp is a wonderful way to get your information across via emails. So this is a wonderful email marketing strategy that a lot of companies and businesses can benefit from. It's primarily known for its robust email marketing capabilities, and it does amazing things. You can, do email marketing, you can do audience management, automation and personalization, integration with third-party apps as well, along with reporting and analytics, and different types of support and resources as well. You can do a lot of cool stuff, and the good thing about it is that they have a plan that fits every company's need. This is one of the tools that I use for marketing that I really enjoy using. It makes my job really easy, and I just love it. So I would highly encourage you to check it out. It's called MailChimp.com, and see what you think. This is today's sweet tip of the day. Have a wonderful day. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. And before we leave, is there any advice you would like to give the employees and the employers that are watching this?
I think just remember that we are all human, and every day is not created equal, and that we all have different needs and desires, and just make sure that we're communicating in a way and talking with one another and allowing people to talk to us about whatever's happening and what's going on, and then we can work together to really come up and problem solve with the different ways to deal with whatever it is that we're dealing with, specifically related to burnout and how that makes us feel.
And I am going to put the information on this link below if you would like to know more about Crosswinds and how they can help you if you would like to speak to a therapist about burnout and how to avoid it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Cheers.